Which one is advantageous? Renting, buying, or owning outright? I'm going to talk about that on this segment, The Gig Geezer. It is Friday, March 28, 2025, and we're almost at the end of another month. This is actually my first Gig Geezer segment that I'm doing out of the box truck since I've made it known that I had made a transaction for box truck back in mid-October 2024. I'm actually heading to a cash game opportunity that involves the box truck, and that is one of the things that I kind of describe as to what kept me busy, what kept me going, what contributed to my affording myself or creating a different realm of business opportunities, a different realm of business earning opportunities, specifically during the month of December, January, and February. But I mentioned a teaser about which one is advantageous, renting or buying, and owning outright. Now, I can go two ways about this, but you can think however way you want, really. In that this can involve a Sprinter / cargo van, or it can involve a box truck. I know that many folk who are exclusively in the box truck space, they talk about this because a lot of folk got into earning money through the use of a box truck in recent years, because, well, number one, they didn't really, they had money, but they didn't have the credit, or they were not so committed on the commitment of buying a box truck, or they had the money, but they just weren't committed to just buying one outright. So they decided to rent a box truck. And there are those who have rented Sprinter / cargo vans as well in recent years. Again, I say this consistently in that during that period where there was a peak demand for capacity, and when I mean by capacity, the term that's used for carriers like myself or you, when there was a plethora of demand, people got into it by any means necessary, and there are many for as many success stories there were about people who started out by renting that piece of equipment. There are multiples of stories in which people crashed and burned because the cost caught up with them. The cost simply caught up with them. And so, starting with renting, I'm going to give you the example that I know of in terms of renting a vehicle. And this is why I ended up making certain decisions that I made back in 2021. At that time, and this is a personal situation, and you can apply it to a box truck or Sprinter / cargo van situation. In my household, I had a 2018 Pathfinder that was functional, but it was showing signs of issues. My queen had a Chevy Trailblazer that she was using. She purchased it outright, purchased it cash. But within weeks, months, if not weeks of ownership, the transmission went out. And the crazy thing about it was that within a couple of weeks, if not days, of her transmission going out, I had to put the Pathfinder in the shop because I thought that based on diagnostic analysis that it was it was maybe a sensor or two, but it was much deeper than that. And so the mechanic whom I took it to, who happened to be the guy who repaired the van in a previous Get Geezer segment, he did a lot of things looking into the issue, and short of looking into buying another engine, or proposing buying another engine and replacing it. In the interim, we're now down 2 vehicles, and so in order for us to get around and for me to make money, my queen to go to work, I rented a vehicle. Now this is 2021 money, so you may want to tack on a few more dollars, but you'll understand what I'm saying. For me to rent that vehicle for 1 week was $703, of which $120, $130 was insurance, in that it was set up to where if I were to total that vehicle, I could flip them the keys and walk away. So, say like 570 base for a week, supposedly unlimited miles. And that's the thing when you rent. You have to be careful of the miles, because if you go over on the miles, you have to pay so much per mile. So I paid $703 for 1 week, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this forever. But then again, if you're not in the position of buying another vehicle, this may be the situation that you're in. So I looked into another vehicle. And so that's how I purchased my Taurus, because I refused to. I mean, if you project that out over the course of a month, $703 over the course of a month is pushing $3,000. Now, at that time, I'm making like 6 G's a month. Yeah, you get the math. So now extrapolate that with a Sprinter/cargo van or a box truck. Those numbers are quite relevant. Although I've not looked into, but through the process of editing, through the miracle of editing, this is a number that I had researched, at least on the box truck in 2025, based on what I've been able to ascertain what could be a cost to rent a box truck each week and each month.
Right. So here's the numbers that I come up with. Actually, I'm going to preface this by saying that I was able to research a rental program through a major business, and they offered a significant discount. So what you may be able to do on your own, these numbers may be different, but these are just some numbers to start off with for the sake of this conversation, and also kind of give you a true idea on what it may cost to rent a vehicle if you choose to go that way. So I actually also researched for the rental of a Sprinter/cargo van. So I'm going to start with a Sprinter/cargo van. The rental rate per week will be $479.75 a week. Then there is how many miles that you would be allowed initially, and that's 1,000 miles at 13 cents a mile, so that's $130. And then let's presume that you drive 2,000 miles in a week, which is conceivable. And so you would have to pay beyond the 1,000 miles 20 cents a mile, so that's $200. So now you're at $809.75. Then let's presume that you use that insurance program that may allow for you to flip them the keys if you total the vehicle. For liability coverage is $175 a week. And for damages, $105 a week. So that's $1,079.75. And then let's presume then your first full tank of gas that you would have to do. I mean, that's conceivable as well. So with a Sprinter van, you may spend $70. So before you make any money that week, you're in the hole $1,150. So now we move on to a small box truck. So that would be your 16-foot box trucks. And so the rental rate under this program, the source that I was able to find, was $484.75. Then let's go back through the numbers of the initial 1,000 miles at 13 cents a mile, $130. And then let's presume you go over, so you drive 2,000 miles in a week. So the extra miles is $200. So now you're at $814.75. Then for liability insurance is $182, and then for damages is $126. So now you're at $1,122.75. And then for your first tank of gas, presuming that it's a 32 gallon tank, and it's a diesel engine, you may spend $115. Now with the van, for that initial tank of gas, that probably gets you anywhere between 400 and 500 miles. For the initial tank on this particular box truck model, it probably gets you anywhere between 300 and 400 miles. So then the last rental vehicle would be the non-CDL box truck. So that would be your larger one. That's your 26-foot box truck with the lift gate. The small box truck presumably would have a lift gate as well. To rent that one each week would be $599.75. And then we go through the numbers respectively: $130 for the initial 1,000 miles, $200 for the second 1,000 miles. So you're now at $929.75. Then for liability insurance, $252, and then for damages, $126. So you're at $1,307.75. And then for your first tank of gas is typically about it's like a 70-gallon tank somewhere in there. I believe most models they say are 70-gallon tanks. So, and assuming that $3.50 a gallon, your first full tank would be $245. So now, with the small box truck, before you earn anything, you're in the hole $1,240. And with the non-CDL box truck, the 26-foot, you're in the hole $1,550.
So, just think about it. Before you think of anything else, over the course of a week, $703. Let's just say $700 went to renting a vehicle. Now, if you're out there saying, "Hey, man, I'm making $1,000 a week, $1,200 a week," do the math. Do the math. So now, look into buying a vehicle. All right? Now, as it turns out, that Pathfinder that I bought, I described how it disappointed me. And so the guy who worked on it, he suggested, "Hey man, if I were you, I would try to get rid of this thing. I'd try to trade it in." And I traded it in the next day. And so this is my personal situation. Everybody's situation is different. About a month later, I traded out of that Pathfinder and into the F-150 that you've seen me in videos. And in that individual situation, I happen to be in a position where I bought one vehicle in 1 month, and the next month buying another vehicle. And also the second vehicle was eating a lot of negative equity. I happened to pick a vehicle that ate up all that negative equity. And in my situation, I knew once I got into it that I'm going to have to keep this vehicle for basically the entire term of the loan in order to get myself out of the negative equity that I had taken on. Everybody's situation is different, but the thing is when you're buying a vehicle, you've got one payment a month. So now you know that a part of your monthly expenditures, you've got to cover your vehicle note. And so if I were to use the example of my van, because a year and a half later, now in July 2021, August 2021, ownership and operation of a sprinter/cargo van was the furthest thing from my mind. Okay, furthest thing. I had not even thought of that. But December 2022, complete the transaction for a van. I've had videos on that. Let's say that I can give you a high rounded number or a low rounded number, but let's say that the low rounded number is $590 a month. That's how much I pay on my van. So I know that a part of my expenses, depending on how I want to calculate it, I've used just the interest paid alone, or I can use the straight up number. Either way, $590 a month. Now, when you compare renting to buying, which one sounds better? But there's the cost with buying a vehicle, namely with insurance, because the insured value of the vehicle is going to affect your premium. This is something that I did not realize until like last year, 2024, and I've been licensed in property and casualty at that point for 10 years. Okay, so yes, you can make more money. You can retain more money or keep more money if you buy a vehicle versus renting. But I've recently shared with y'all here on this channel about buying this box truck. I paid for it outright cash, so I don't have a payment on this box truck. My insurance is a lot less because of the dollar value that I put on this vehicle when I purchased for tax purposes. It's a hell of a lot less than the van. When I bought the van, the assessed tax value was $1,100+ plus. This past January, I paid $700 in taxes. Now, the reason why I'm paying less is because I got miles on the vehicle, and it's considered high miles, and so there are breaks that have been given for the high miles. But when you own a vehicle outright, the advantage is that you're always in a positive equity situation. You don't really have to worry about depreciation, because people, when you're buying a vehicle, you worry about depreciation, but depreciation, it's already lost a certain amount of value when you take it off the lot and you shake hands and you've driven away with the vehicle. If you are buying it, okay, you're making monthly payments on it. You talk about depreciation, like I said, that is an accounting term. You're amortizing a certain amount of that value over the course of typically a 5-year period. But in doing so, you have to be adept with with the depreciation, or it may produce an IRS audit. But when you own a vehicle outright, you're in a positive equity situation, because if you turn around and sell it, you're going to get money back on it. Okay. The other thing is that you're also in a profitable situation, because you can put the vehicle in service and you're making money. Your overhead, you still have your maintenance costs, but you're thinking more profit than anything else. That's the thing. And so if you were to compare the buying versus owning, having bought the vehicle outright is better. Now, not all of us, and I'm not implying this on anybody, but let's say, for example, the cost of a van or a box truck, let's use the number 20,000. Not everyone has $20,000 in their bank account. Okay, and so in order to obtain that piece of equipment, it may require a combination of cash and financing, and that is a highly likely situation. But I hope you can see here where the advantages are. The advantage really is, if you got the money, yes, pay for it outright. This is something that I wish I could have done in 2022, but I was in a situation, I've been in a situation in that I could have put my good name on some paper and complete the transaction for a vehicle. I've also been in a position, fortunately, where I can hand over a sum of money and place it into someone's hand and sign the title and take ownership of a vehicle as well. But only you can make that decision. Only you can decide what is best for you. I would personally, I would rule out the one option that I would rule out, if at all costs, is renting a vehicle. I think renting is only necessary if you're in a certain situation where you just absolutely positively need the use of a vehicle, and renting is more of a temporary solution than a short term temporary. I mean, absolutely temporary, like 1 week or a couple of days or 1 week tops, as opposed to an intermediate solution where you rent something with eyes of buying. Okay, this is just me talking. This is just my opinion or my observation and my observation only. All right, so I'm about less than 5 minutes away from this business location where I'm doing this cash game opportunity. But I also want to point out this when it comes to the question between owning outright and financing a vehicle. Depending on your business needs, it may get to a point where you're gonna have to finance. There's no other way around it. Unless let's say you have the need of 3 or 4 vehicles. Now you're talking. It could be, let's use the value of 25,000. 3 or 4 vehicles. That's $75,000 to $100,000. The question is gonna be: do you have $100,000 in your account that you can just use outright? Can you withstand a hit to your cash flow of $75,000 to $100,000? I mean, some folks will say, "Fuck yeah, I can do that, motherfucker." You don't know me, man. Shit, I'm carrying money. I'm carrying money, motherfucker. I got some money. I'm glad for you, but not all businesses got $75,000 to $100,000 in this example in their account. So then, what do you do? Now, as a business, there's no shame in building business credit. But in order to build business credit, to start out, it's going to be on your good credit. And that's how my getting the Sprinter/Cargo van, it was in my business name. But I am the guarantor, which meant that the terms of financing was based on my good credit. Okay? And I have built up business credit, but I have chosen not to explore any options with business credit. I'm not that is not in the immediate future. I am, admittedly, my next goal is a 26-foot box truck, and I'm looking to make an outright purchase even of that. Unless, I catch lightning in a bottle with, the way I'm going about, unless I catch lightning in a bottle and the way I'm going about doing my business model, I'm looking at making these incremental progressions. And so that's my scenario. Your scenario could be that you're looking to bring in people to work for you, to make your money work even more so for you. So that means you may have to scale things. Okay? And there are people who have started. I've seen the examples of people with box trucks. They started with 1 box truck, and a year and a half to 2 years later, they got 3 or 4 box trucks. Okay? I guess the volume by which they're doing business has put themselves in a position where they've got multiple pieces of equipment, and that's great for them. But again, there are those who make their moves by also financing. And you can't fault them. You can't knock them for that. They've made the determination. This is the best. This is the best direction they need to pursue. So, if you're a small time like myself right now, if it's just you, it would be my estimation that, again, buying a vehicle outright, purchasing one outright would be the better move to make. Or if you do finance, you commit to a very aggressive repayment schedule in order to lessen that obligation, because it's always something that it fucks with your mind when you've got that monthly payment to make. I'll say that much. So that's all I had to share for this particular segment of the Gig Geezer. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully it will provoke you to think about the moves that you want to make in the pursuit of your personal business operation. And if you happen to like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome comments in the section below. I'm in Wood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.